I recently picked up these Machinist squares, but they don't have a case. So, let's build one. I'm starting with a block of walnut, since I had some lying around and I really like the way that it looks. I'm using double-sided tape to hold the work to the table. On large pieces like this, if you use enough tape, it seems to hold pretty well. And it's a lot easier than trying to set up clamps. Plus you don't have any clearance issues. You have to remember though that this isn't as strong as traditional work holding methods, so if you push the limits, you're liable to throw the workpiece off the table. I'm using one of my new squares just to get this piece relatively square with the table. It doesn't have to be exact because we're cutting off the entire perimeter. I just want to make sure that I don't have a corner that sticks out farther than the others. To get the piece to the right height, I'm using a Freud 3/8 inch straight flute bit. I would like to use something bigger to get this done a little quicker, but this is the biggest bit that I have in the shop. I'm taking a pretty wide step over because I'm not too worried about the surface finish. This will get sanded when I'm done. So if there's any little ripples or lines left from the cutter, that's not a big deal. And with the surfacing done, we can work on trimming the perimeter down to the final size. I went pretty easy with this step because it seems that a lot of the times when you're holding work with the double stick tape, the edges seem to give the most trouble as far as dislodging the workpiece from the table. And this is where I ran into my least favorite limitation of the 3040 CNC, the lack of Z travel. I found I wasn't going to be able to make it to the bottom of the workpiece, so I had to stop the cut and reposition the spindle in the holder in order to get the required Z travel. But with that taken care of, we can get back to it. Alright, now that the profile's done, we can start to mill the pockets. I just eyeballed the 0 on this cutter because it's not really critical that it be absolutely perfect. I just wanted to roughly get my pockets in the middle of the block. I turned on the compressed air for milling the pockets because I wanted to make sure we got as many of the chips out as possible. That way the cutter is not recutting the same chips over and over again. Alright, with the pockets complete, I'm using the 90-degree chamfer bit just to mark out the center holes of these two so that I have a good reference for drilling and installing the screws later on. Once that's done, we can move to chamfering all of the sharp edges. Alright, that's the machining done, and now it's just a matter of using a little bit of sandpaper to remove any machining marks that might be left over. Finish off the top, I'm using a random orbit sander just to make sure everything is nice and flat and smooth. And that was followed up with a little bit of hand sanding at 220 grit. Alright, let's apply the finish. I'm using a product called Tried and True. It's a linseed oil and beeswax mixture. It's super easy to use. You just glob it all on. Make sure it fills in all the little nooks and crannies and then let it sit for about an hour. Then you can wipe off the excess and let it sit for another 24 hours and kind of cure. Takes a little patience to get it in all the corners, but it's not too bad. While that soaks in, let's work on the plastic tabs. I'm using the Lexan brand polycarbonate because I had it lying around and it machines really well. It doesn't seem to gum up the flutes like acrylics tend to. It's just overall it's a pleasure to work with. You have to be careful using double-sided tape for small parts though, because even though the forces might be the same on the work, the amount of material in contact with the adhesive is much smaller, so it's much easier to dislodge parts. I was not careful. Alright, final assembly. I drilled the holes for the screws off camera, but I'm just using these small brass screws I picked up from the hardware store. I think they look really good with the walnut. Alright, that's final assembly done. Let's see how they fit. I'm really happy with the way these turned out, so I may have to make some more of these for some of my other tools. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe. I think I'm going to start a whole series of these small projects that can be completed in either a day or a couple days, so there should be plenty more to come in the future.